Hey YouTube, what's going on? I'm doing a little impromptu story time uh, vlog, I guess. Hope all of you guys are having a good 4th of July, or if you're watching this after July 4th, hope you had a good holiday and all of you were safe and had fun with your families or friends or whoever you spent the day with. Um, I decided I wanted to share kind of a cool story that I thought some of you might be interested in. I'm doing this off the cuff just from my laptop here. No fancy equipment or even my phone or anything. I'm just kind of spitballing this through the computer's webcam. But as the title says, I had an opportunity to meet John Hughes. And those of you that don't know this about me, John Hughes is my favorite filmmaker of all time and has been since I was about 12 years old. He's from the Chicago area. Well, technically, he's from Michigan, but he spent the majority of his life in the North Shore of Chicago, the north suburbs of Chicago, whereas I grew up in the western suburbs of Chicago, so we were kind of in different suburban regions of the Chicagoland area. But like many people of varying generations, I grew up with his movies. Even before I even knew who he was, I, as a kid in the 1990s, was, sitting in front of the television watching my VHS copy of Home Alone or Ferris Bueller's Day Off or Baby's Day Out more times than I care to admit. And as I got older and started getting into more of his teen films when I was a teenager, like The Breakfast Club and Pretty in Pink and Some Kind of Wonderful, the list goes on. I realized that all of these movies that I had been fixated on my entire life was made by the same person. And not only that, he lived about 45 minutes north of me. And so he was in my backyard to a certain degree. And as I became interested in filmmaking at a very young age, I started springing to his body of work, and it helped kind of show me that somebody from my neck of the woods could make it to the big time. I think it's healthy for every artist or anybody who's aspiring to do something that you can hook yourself into somebody that can inspire you to be a better version of yourself and a better filmmaker in my case. And while I've never made anything as a filmmaker that I think really kind of showcases my love and respect for John Hughes and his body of work, other than the fact that we both very much love Chicago and the area of Chicago, I'm pretty sure you can get that out of my work. I never in a million years thought that I'd ever be able to have the opportunity to have a conversation with him. And so this is where my story starts after the little prologue of why I'm even telling you this and what, John Hughes means to me, which I will mention to you one more little tidbit here before I tell you the actual story. I have John Hughes's production company tattooed on my arm. I got it at a tattoo shop in Chicago when I was living up on the north side with my now husband. A friend of mine actually got me this tattoo as a birthday present in December. I think that was 2014. So yeah, I have the Hughes Entertainment star permanently fixated on my arm. So this is the story. It is winter of 2008. I had just turned 18 by like 3 weeks. Christmas had just passed. We were nearing New Year's, and my mother and I did something that was kind of a annual or biannual tradition that we started, I'd say around the time that I was in junior high. It was once a year around the winter time, once the holiday season started, we would drive from Naperville to Lake Forest, Illinois to go look at all the different Christmas lights on the houses, and we would always finish the night by going somewhere to get hot chocolate. And so this was late December of 2008. I'm obviously doing that with my mom. We're looking at all the nice houses and whatnot. And at this point in my journey as a person and a filmmaker, I was very much aware that John Hughes lived in Lake Forest, Illinois. I did not at the time know where his house was, but I knew that that's where he lived. He lived in Lake Forest, and um, we finished up the night looking at the houses, and we stopped at a Caribou Coffee that was in downtown Lake Forest off of Western Avenue, long since gone. I go in there with my mother, and I get a cookie and a hot chocolate and whatnot, and my mom's finishing paying, and she spots an empty table with two seats up against the window that looks out to Western Avenue in Lake Forest, and Mom says, go grab that table. I'll be with you in a minute. Okay, so I go and do that, and I sit down, and as I see my mom in the distance walk away from the counter, and she's pulling some napkins, what have you. I see a man directly across from me, and he's wearing a suit, some nice shoes, like some loafers, but I can't make out who it is. And he's reading the paper. He's got a paper up to his face. And I don't really think anything else of it, really. My mom sits down, we start having a conversation, like, oh, which house was your favorite? What lights did you like? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, I liked this house on Lake Street, whatever. And so we're talking about what we had just done and whatnot. And then suddenly I notice in my peripherals behind my mom that the gentleman is lowering the paper to turn the page. And that's when I realized it was John Hughes. I freeze up. He makes eye contact with me almost immediately because I can't not look away from him. I am frozen. And he lets out a very faint smile because I think he realized that I was acknowledged, like I knew who he was. He kind of lets out this kind of half smile, turns the page, puts the paper back up to his face. And I looked to my mom and I said, Mom, you're not going to believe this, but John Hughes is sitting behind you. And Mom said, well, what, she's trying to play cool or whatnot. She goes, what table is it? I said, it's the gentleman sitting over there. He's in a suit and he's reading the paper. So my mom turns, and it like, to a certain extent, it was like something out of a fucking movie. So right as my mom turns to see what I'm talking about, John lowers the paper again, now sees that both of us are looking at him. He then, kind of like nods his head, smiles at my mom, looks at me again, and then puts the paper back up. And Mom said, are you sure that that's him? And I said, I am 100% positive that is John Hughes. And my mom looks at me and she says, you don't have many opportunities like this in your life. My mom's always been the type of person where she believes that everything happens for a reason, and that, not like divine intervention or whatnot, but like, certain things are put in place for you then to act on and, have a moment or have an experience or whatnot. And so my mom was really pushing me and saying, you've got a chance to go talk to your idol, to go speak and tell him how much his work means to you and how you're trying to become a filmmaker and you want to do what he does when you get to be older. And like any other teenager, who's shy and withdrawn and introverted as I was afraid. And I had this irrational fear go in my head that said, you're going to go up to him and he is going to behave or say something that is going to completely, it's that age-old thing of you never want to meet your idols, right? And so I had this irrational fear and kind of anxiety hit me. And I'm like, no, Mom, I don't want to bother him. I don't want to bother him. He's there. I don't want to bother him. And my mom said, you don't know if you'll ever get this opportunity again. You need to go over there and say something to him. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So we finish eating, whatnot. We get up. I walk right past him. And that was it. And then it was like 8 or 9 months later, he passed away of a heart attack in New York City. And it was at that moment, the day that he passed away, when I learned about it that morning, sitting in my room, that I realized that my mother was right. That the world saw how much this man's body of work impacted me, not only as an artist, but as a human being. And how much someone of his success and his stature and his voice from the same neck of the woods as me meant to me. And they were giving me, the universe was giving me an opportunity to have a conversation with this man. And now we're going to jump forward a little bit, because this will make sense in a minute. 10 years ago, I had the opportunity, thanks to my friend David, to be a videographer on the 30th anniversary celebration of Ferris Bueller in Chicago. It was called Ferris Fest, which my friend David had organized. And the first night that they screened the movie at the John and Nancy Hughes Theater at the Gordon Community Center in Lake Forest, I had the opportunity to talk to John Hughes' wife. I talked to Nancy Hughes for about 25-ish minutes or so. And I laid everything out. I spoke to her and had the conversation that I should have had with John when I was 18 years old. And Nancy said something to me that will live with me as long as I live. Like, it'll be with me as long as I'm on this earth. And that was, and I quote, "I really wish my husband was here, because if he heard what you just said to me and you spoke to him the way that you just spoke to me, he would have invited you over tonight and you would have been up all night talking about stuff with him." And that solidified what my mother was trying to tell me all those years ago in 2008. But I didn't know. So I ponder every once in a while with this idea of, what would that conversation have been? If my little scrawny 18-year-old self, had walked up to one of the most influential and prolific and successful filmmakers in American history, how would he have actually responded to me? Would he have actually done what his wife said he would do? Or was Nancy just being nice? I don't know. I mean, I'm Midwestern. I don't like, I always like thinking the best of things. And I believe that Nancy was telling me the truth, which, by the way, I will just say, Nancy Hughes is one of the kindest, most considerate people I've ever met in my life. The memories that she gave me in that conversation, and the kindness, you would never think in a million years that you were talking to someone whose husband was one of the biggest, powerhouses in Hollywood for a time. Like, she was just as everyday as any one of my friends' mothers was in Naperville, which is where I grew up in Naperville. And so, why am I telling this story? I'm telling the story because I want all of you out there who want to be filmmakers or are filmmakers to do what I didn't do that day. Because we all have our idols. We all have people that we look up to. If life ever gives you a chance to have a conversation with someone that you look up to, whether it's an actor or an athlete or a writer, a politician, a film director, a theater director, a dancer, go and talk to them. Don't be afraid of what the outcome could be. Go into it with the intention that it's going to be rewarding for you, because you're never going to know. And I sit now the rest of my life. I'm now the age that John was when he filmed Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which is just wild to me. knowing that life had given me an opportunity to talk to him and I turned it down because I was scared. Um, I think that about covers it. That's my story. So I hope all of you guys are having a good weekend. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.